Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Ed.
I'm Cam.
And I'm Alex. Guys, why are Sundays so depressing?
You're out of the group.
Why are Sundays so depressing?
We record these on Sundays.
We're the secret answer to that question that Julian has posed on this album that we're reviewing today, which is the new Strokes album, which is called The New Abnormal. It's their first album in 7 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, the Strokes are a pretty seminal indie rock band, garage rock band. If you don't know who they are, then I don't know. I don't I don't think we really need to go through like an oral history of the Strokes here, and I'm not just saying this because I'm too ill to host properly.
I mean, you could, if you're a music fan, you probably have a basic cursory knowledge of their biggest hits and
yeah.
Their seminal Is This It album, solid follow-up, Room on Fire, other songs. You know, they've been a big part of the indie rock landscape for 2 decades now.
Yeah. People would argue that perhaps they started trailing off in quality and direction by the time they put out their third album, First Impressions of Earth, which has some really good individual songs on it, most of which were singles, like You Only Live Once, Heart in a Cage, classic Strokes songs. But then, I don't know, I feel like that album really trailed off in quality and is one of the most unmemorable. And then after that they did Angles, which was clearly a conscious effort to try and branch out into slightly more experimental territory, or just like exploring new sounds and ideas compared to what they usually do. There's a big meme about how the Strokes is just a cover band of themselves, basically. And I think they were consciously aware of that, even though I think it's kind of a weak criticism. Like, sure, their songs on their first 2 albums all fit into a very similar palette and structured similarly, but it doesn't make them any less great songs, really. And I think when they started branching out on Angles, it's where they really kind of started to fall apart as a group, because there's a lot of really dodgy experiments on that album. And it's still an okay album overall, but I can't really say the same for Come Down Machine, which doubles down on the same approach, and the end result is like really generic sounding Strokes songs paired with just experiments that don't go anywhere, honestly. Not a fan of that album. But
so then there's the 7-year gap between that album and this one, but
yeah,
the band members have actually kept busy in various ways. Albert Hammond Jr. had some solo stuff, but maybe most crucially was Julian with the Voids stuff, which I believe, Ed, you know more about than me.
Yeah, the Voids is it's not even really a side project anymore. It's basically Julian's new band.
Coexistent main band with this one.
Yeah, it's good that you bring that up, because definitely in the time between the last Strokes album and this one, the 2 Voids albums that came out, they've definitely informed Julian's progression as an artist, and it seems to have leaked over into various aspects of this new album in a very good way. Because like I was saying, the experimentation on the last 2 Strokes albums really was to their detriment, I'd say. But on here, the experimentation is really welcome, and really surprisingly so, considering this was produced by Rick Rubin, which I'm sure you guys have some stuff to say about that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
At least he did a really good job here. I think there's one moment on the entire album that I find really irritating, like a certain production choice, but we'll talk about that when we go on to individual tracks.
Cam and I were talking about Rick Rubin earlier, how he's properly legendary producer who also has some of the worst produced albums ever in his back catalogue too, so I'm really glad he did a really good job here.
So what did you think of this album, Cam?
So I haven't kept up with the Strokes. I missed them back in the early 2000s, and I never really got into them, aside from picking up Is This It and Room on Fire over the years. But even without that, just knowing their, gradually decreasing reputation with their last couple of albums, I could tell that I'm listening to this, that it feels a lot like a band consciously trying to rebrand and adjust their image and try something new. And on that level, I think it succeeds.
So what did you think of this album, Alex?
I really liked it. Julian's not just a great singer in the band now, but I feel like his keyboard playing, which I believe he does on the band now,
I have no idea.
I believe he's the main keyboardist now, and
Oh,
that
okay.
is as crucial to some of the songs here as the rest of the band. So I feel like he's done really well on this album, vocally and instrumentally. I just feel like this is a really cohesive, strong album. The band really work well together. You can tell it's a band that have played together for 20 years. Yeah, I'm just really happy this album exists, and I'm still kind of blown away by all the songs, to be honest.
I am also very happy that this album exists because I'm still kind of torn on how much I like this album, but I can say with certainty, hands down, this is their best album since Room on Fire for me, which was a long, long, long time ago. So I'm really pleased to say that. But it's not like the singles didn't give enough of an inclination that this would be a return to form. But even then, even going into this with the knowledge of what the singles sounded like, it's still a consistently surprising listen. Their embrace of longer song structures, longer track lengths, more complex structures, some weird production choices, most of which do pay off. And also just an embrace of like adventurousness in general is something that I feel like it's been missing from their music for such a long time, and it's why I found a lot of positives in Julian's work with the Voids, because that project is basically his excuse to do anything that he couldn't do in the Strokes. And I think why this album succeeds is because it still feels like a Strokes album. There's still the hallmarks of a Strokes record, like Albert's melodic, crunchy guitar playing, some really to the point and emotionally charged vocal performances from Julian Casablancas. Generally pretty good drumming, but I think I don't know what the drummer's called, but I think his work on this album is highlighted in an interesting way because every single song is kind of a similar tempo, I noticed. And I've also seen people joke about every single chord progression on this album being the same.
Well, it's kind of like mid-tempo, a lot of
Yeah,
this that speeds up into more up-tempo during the choruses.
yes.
I kind of noticed that as well.
It's kind of unusual for them because they were known for doing much shorter and brisk, fast-paced
More
songs.
energetic songs,
Yeah,
yeah.
but they pulled it off this time, I'd say, with these longer, more complex tracks.
Yeah, there's still, it's odd because I think adventurous is the right word because they seem like really locked in. And obviously, like I said earlier, this is a band that really know how to play together.
Hmm.
They're really tight, really locked in. But some of these songs sound like they're creatively meandering around from like different melody and vocal section as if it was like a jam session, but it couldn't be. Like some of the songs feel kind of loose,
Yeah,
but the band playing itself is still really tight and right there. It's hard to actually think about how they recorded this almost. Like these songs were so planned out ahead of time, like mapped out, but they sound spontaneous in execution as well.
I get what you mean. I love it in songs when you can very easily and vividly imagine the band playing together all the way through the song, rather than it being just a bunch of overdubs or like individually created sections or stems, which, you know, is often how music is made now, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like actually having the feeling of it all being locked together, and I think the mixing has a lot to do with that. If we're going to go into individual tracks, the opener here, The Adults Are Talking, has to be one of their best opening tracks ever, I'd say. It's easily my favourite opener to a Strokes album since You Only Live Once, which is a pretty high watermark anyway, so like,
I'd say that's the only other one like opener that might specifically
give it a lot of competition,
rival it.
yeah.
Because for some reason I thought Reptilia opened Room on Fire, but it's actually
Whatever
Whatever
happened,
Happened,
yeah.
which is still a
I love that song, but
really
yeah,
good song.
yeah.
But it might not compete with this, which goes to show how strong these songs are.
Yeah. I love the guitar interplay on this song. There's some really, really nice melodies that come through midway through the song. And it also really surprised me on first listen to hear Julian sing in a kind of like reserved vocal approach rather than his usual kind of radio vocal. I don't know how to explain it. Like he's been known to have like a certain style of distortion over his vocals that kind of mask them to an
Yeah.
extent and give them a certain
Well,
flavor. And they're not really present at all on this album, but on the first track, he sounds really muted in an interesting way. Like it's more minimal and more subtle, and it doesn't distract from the rest of the song.
I was just going to say, I actually thought he this was a song where he actually sounded the most like himself of old
Really?
to begin with, but then he begins to sound a more like falsetto higher
Yeah.
register, which is something he's been doing more and more of recently. And I think he's gotten a lot better at it too, because regrettably there is that like one-way trigger song from Come Down Machine, which
Yeah.
I'm not too fond of.
It's kind of an annoying song.
He's gone a lot better since then. He has a really good dynamic vocal range from more muted vocals, like we were saying, but now he can use higher register falsetto vocals really well throughout the whole album, pretty much, and that surprised me on this song.
Well, I'd say the second track, Selfless, kind of sets a precedent for the rest of the album and where it excels and how this differs from their previous work, albums wise. The instrumentation on that track is pretty simple and it's fairly lightly melodic and lightly structured. And it's not really overly ambitious despite the fairly substantial track length. At least compared to older Strokes songs, not so much the rest of the album.
It's actually one of the shorter songs on the
Yeah,
album.
I think where this album really stands out, and we'll get onto the positives and negatives of this later, I guess, is in Julian's vocal performances, as you just mentioned. I'd go as far as to say that the lead vocals kind of carry the album, and yeah, Julian's range has improved so noticeably since Come Down Machine.
Is that by way of the voids they improved?
I'd say so, but I honestly think this is my favourite performance of his vocally on any album, even including those Voids records. He just really,
Fair.
he sounds locked in, he sounds energized, which compared to Come Down Machine and even Angles to an extent is just so refreshing to hear. To go back to Selfless, I really like the little melodic change-ups in the vocal melodies throughout that song, despite the song itself consisting mainly of these arpeggioed guitar melodies and little riffs. It keeps things super interesting and engaging all the way through, with Jules kind of guiding you through it. Like, he kind of works as the glue in a lot of these songs, I'd say.
The actual opening guitar part of Selfless, which I'm not just saying because Rick Rubin also produced Metallica's Death Magnetic, but it really reminded me of The Day That Never Comes by Metallica. But this is way better produced and is just a really sweet, melancholic song, I'd say. Great guitar parts too, like you were saying.
Yeah.
What did you think of Selfless, Cam?
Oh yeah, Selfless is a good one, and like unfortunately, since I'm not as familiar with the Strokes as you guys, and definitely not with the Voids, I can't really comment on the evolution of Julian's voice. But like, I mean, how old do you think he is? Like 40s, 50s?
Yeah, he's middle-aged.
He's 41.
Okay. I mean, he's got a good voice, whether or not it's good for his age, good for being a guy in a rock band for almost 20 years now. But he's got a good instrument and he uses it well all through the album.
Yeah.
And I definitely love the guitar interplay. Like, for me, that's the best thing about the album. Just, like, hearing all the guitars, and they're all mixed so well. There's always something interesting happening.
Honestly, there are so many little moments in the vocals across this album that I feel compelled to single out, because they really are the glue that holds this whole project together for me, aside from a few standout songs, which were mainly the singles. But also, as far as implementing 80s and other classic rock influences into their music, this is way more successful overall than Angles was. The song Bad Decisions has this really nostalgic guitar tone in it, but I'd say it's one of the most emotive and tightly constructed songs on the whole album, and a great choice for a single. I think the post-chorus on that song is basically like peak Strokes in terms of their guitar interplay, like the tone of the guitars, Julian's vocals, how it all just locks together so well. Like you say, these guys are so good at playing together, and it really comes through on the record and feels like a fully fledged performance, I guess.
I'm not sure which of the two guitarists does the main guitar here, Nick Valenci or Albert Hammond Jr., because obviously they both interweave with each other really well most of the time. But the guitar tone on here distinctly reminded me of New Order,
Yeah,
especially
definitely.
the Murder, Lies, Corruption era, and sort of by way of that, new wave in general. So yeah, there's definitely a really nice nostalgic sheen to this song. The chorus is furiously catchy, and Cam, you did mention to me earlier the origin of the chorus.
Yeah, so it is at least partly the melody of Dancing with Myself. Like to the point, like I don't know how these things work these days. Like if they just wrote it and then realized, oh crap, this sounds exactly like Dancing with Myself. We need to, get it cleared and get a writing credit for Billy Idol and his like whoever his songwriting partner was, I forget. Or if they like were consciously, okay, we're making a very 80s song. Let's just go ahead and try to clear a song we love so we can use that on our album. And so like I really do love Bad Decisions, but I just feel so weird about how like just what it is and like not knowing how it was made. I can't like fully embrace it
Hmm.
if that's like not psychotic of me.
Well, even if it is the case that it is built upon that song, and it is because, like you say, he does have the co-writing credit, they build on it really damn well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like Ed said, the post-chorus to it is amazing, and just the subsequent vocal parts and the band backing it up. It's just really tastefully done, and I did actually think on my second listen that this reminds me of a song. What is it? And before we even had that chat where you told me that, Cam, I did think that was the song it was similar to, but I didn't think it was similar to the point of needing a writing credit, but I don't know what justifies giving those these days, like to clear it.
I think it's literally just from the Making Bad Decisions, that
Yeah, it
part.
is like the same melody, to be fair.
Like it's
Yeah.
not like in the guitars. Like when I was trying to A B the songs, I was like, okay, is it in the guitars? Because yeah, the guitar tone sounds a lot like everything from the '80s. So I'm like, is that what it was in Dancing with Myself? It also sounds kind of
No.
Curie, but no, it's just that melody is Dancing with Myself. So
Dancing with Myself guitar is more just punk, I guess. Just more fast paced than this.
While it does have an aura of throwback to it, while it is like nostalgic, it's still adventurous and fresh. Like I don't want the points of reference
Sure.
to come off as us saying that that song is not, worth as much as it would be if it weren't for it paying homage to other artists and a bygone generation of music. It still feels like a modern Strokes song to me. I'm not too familiar with the song that they had to give credit to for that chorus, so I can't speak on if I would have the same experience as Cam. Yeah, it's a really good song.
After Bad Decisions, in between the other single At the Door, there is Eternal Summer, which is notable for a few reasons, right, Ed?
Yeah, this is going to be difficult because I was writing notes on my last listen to this album, and I've listened to this album a whole bunch. Usually, when we review stuff on Busted Speakers, if it's something I'm not super just enthusiastic about anyway, I'll typically only listen to it 2 or 3 times and dedicate one of those listens to just writing down notes and general thoughts.
Yeah.
For this, I've been listening to it a lot, and I still can't 100% make my mind up on whether Eternal Summer is the worst thing ever or maybe the best.
Exactly.
No, that's completely unfair. I think this song is really good. It has a very summery. God, of course it's called Eternal Summer, but it has a very nice, like sun-tinged, summery sounding, stretched out guitar riff in the
Yeah, it's
first
not
part.
the instrumental that we're talking about.
And
That's the
yeah, Julian sings
weird
in his
part.
upper register a bit in the first verse, and it's like, okay, yeah, this sounds a bit kooky,
Okay.
and then suddenly it just crashes into this like Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, janky, groovy, bizarre segment. I don't even know if it's the chorus because it's such a like departure from the rest of the song.
It's the complete dynamic change up from the
Yeah.
falsetto, slick, like smooth verses into this goofy, gruffer vocal during the choruses. They heavily contrast each other. Like if he was singing in a quote unquote normal Julian Casablancas way, I don't know if it would be any less bizarre because it is just a big shift into an odd
Yeah.
vocal moment, to say the least.
It's a massive instrumental change up, but yeah, the main thing that caught me off guard listening to this was the lyrics and the vocals. We've taken time to point out just how great the vocals are on this album, and that's why this part probably stood out so much more because they're kind of intentionally goofy from what I can tell. It
Yeah.
really does, like, it sounds like Julian trying to sound like the Wall era Pink Floyd. I can't recall who the vocalist was at
Oh,
that point.
well, it actually does sound like that, and I did not come to that conclusion myself.
Yeah,
I did not even think that at all, but now you say it, it sounds a bit more like David Gilmour than Roger
yes,
Waters.
yeah, definitely a David Gilmour type vocal.
Even then, it'd be like David Gilmour on like Young Lust, The Wall, kind of.
Well,
Some really raw vocal song. Yeah, it's hard to think why this song has this chorus, to be honest.
it
Like,
just
it has a lot of
it
bombast.
gives it this bizarre energy, honestly. Like, I think the lyrics are really goofy and kind of bad, but I like how the verse fits in with the title of the song, like it's going to be summer forever, but then like this bridge or this chorus or whatever just crashes in and just ruins everything, perhaps intentionally so. And it kind of works
Like,
because like the instrumental then marries these two parts of the same song together, and it actually works really well. Like, this is the longest song on the
yeah.
album, and it does not feel its length.
I don't want to jump tracks, but there's some other songs on here that are of a similar length, and they do feel
Yeah,
it.
I'd say so.
What was your take on this one, Cam? If you even thought it was notable for the same reasons we did?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely caught the Pink Floydiness of the guitars. That's like pretty obvious and undeniable. I don't know if Young Lust is necessarily the best point of comparison for the voice.
Yeah, maybe it's not as gruff as that, to be fair. I was just thinking of Gilmore vocals from the Wall era, and that was the only one I could think of.
Yeah, and I mean, it is definitely structured weirdly, but I don't think that's to a disadvantage necessarily. Like you guys, I couldn't really tell where the verses end and where the chorus begins, or if it's just like an entire just song that flows into itself. If you want to get pretentious about it, um, but I mean, I liked it. I like the way it builds
But
and grows.
I didn't think it was to its disadvantage. It's just a unique entity on the album that inexplicably has falsettos and then a really goofy, gruff-voiced chorus. But the contrast itself and the complete craziness of it, even existing and working this well, I hate to say it, it kind of makes it a complete highlight for me on the album. I look forward to it every time, and it comes right after Bad Decisions. It's just a complete thrill to listen to.
Yeah. I was being very hyperbolic about it before. It's not the worst thing ever. It's not the best thing ever
Not at
by
all.
any means, but it definitely caught
No.
me off guard, and I'm not gonna lie, it made me piss myself laughing the first time I listened to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that comes off as like a recommendation, but something has just drawn me to that song, and I can't say I don't enjoy it when it makes that shift at the beginning, because it goes from these really stretched out, long falsettoed vocals about just the most generic subject ever into Julian's just bizarre wailing of life is such a funny journey and the word
And
psychedelic.
Hercules?
I can't even. I really don't know what to say about this song other than it just made me laugh, and that probably counts for something. The
Yeah,
fact that it's
it's
such an
it's an
outlier as well, and
experience.
it's not, it's not a trend across the album for it to make me kind of cringe a little bit. It's just this one song. But then I really like everything else about it. I really love the guitar tone on it. Apparently, it was the song that Rick Rubin was most heavily involved in changing. I don't know if that speaks to the Pink Floyd influence, if that even is there, and that's not something I'm just projecting onto it. But
It'll be funny if it was
yeah,
like, okay, you've got these nice falsetto vocals, Julian,
why don't you try and sound like David Gilmour?
but I'm Rick Rubin, and I'm telling you, put this chorus in.
uh, right, we
So
got to
here's
talk about
something.
a different song. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Just like one more thing that I don't know if it even matters. I just want to throw it in. Did you guys catch who has writing credits on Eternal Summer?
I did not.
It's credited to the Strokes and then Richard and Tim Butler from the Psychedelic Furs.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, didn't know if like
Oh,
that might influence what you get, like how you guys think about it, or if there's any other input or influences you might be able to point out with that.
maybe that's why it goes like psychedelic.
I don't even want to try and replicate it. Just listen. If you're listening to this review and you couldn't care less about the Strokes, that's fine. Just listen to that song because it will make your day better.
It's an experience, man.
Yeah. Well, to speak on Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus quickly, I'd say that's the most sort of seminal, quintessential sounding Strokes song on this album. Aside from a buzzy synth at the beginning, it's pretty Strokes by numbers, but also very good.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
pretty
r-
safe song.
Really nice chorus. That was the song that in the run of singles made me confident that I was going to like this album because, like I said, they just sound more energized than they have in a long time. And it's such a good mixture overall of the old Strokes sound and the familiarity of that, but also exploring new ideas, which the first single, Out the Door, was obviously a conscious choice of releasing the most non-Strokes sounding song on the album, I'd say. Are there even any guitars on that song? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think it is mainly keyboards
Yeah.
slash synth based, which definitely makes it like feel like a Julian vehicle. Like I could see this almost being something he thought, okay, I could maybe make a Void song out of this, but no, I'll go back see how the Strokes do
hmm
with it. I don't know if that's at all the backstory of this. Probably
Well,
not.
I feel like the reason it's a Strokes song is probably because lyrically it feels like it has a lot of resonance in terms of the fact that they've got back together after so many years and people
Yeah,
have these certain expectations of the band. I mean, you can tell they were really burning out on Come Down Machine. I think it's public knowledge that they weren't entirely happy with that album. They sound into it here, and I think At the Door was a really good outlier for the passion that's been put into this particular album by Julian and company. But it's like he says, I've lost this game so many times before, perhaps maybe in reference to not really knowing where to take this band, wanting to experiment, but always trailing a bit too far off in the wrong direction. And the new album is definitely the sound of them justifying it, I guess, justifying getting back together.
I'm glad this song is just so good because I feel like single-handedly this and subsequently the album have like any arguments of them not being good anymore is completely gone. This
Oh
is a
yeah.
really creative, interesting song. Yeah, seems to follow Julian's vocal more than anything else, which is really good. Sort of a different mood for the band here. It's not as immediately catchy as like Bad Decisions for a single, but it's like the Strokes are back and they mean business and they're making something really new. So I just really like it, and I really like when it goes all low key and quiet at the end.
Mm.
Really nice moment there.
Yeah, the outro on that song is just lovely. Honestly, it's the sort of moment that I never would have expected to hear on a Strokes album, but here it
And
is.
quickly speaking on outros of songs, did you guys notice that some of these songs had like little, maybe like 20-second song idea fragments
Mm.
at the end of them, or little skits with the bands goofing
Yeah,
off?
like at the end of
Uh,
Eternal Summer, there's this Tame Impala sounding little ditty that is just so flanged and phased and compressed that you can't even tell what's being sung. Kind of
yeah,
sounds like a parody of Tame Impala.
I quite like those moments.
Not say they invented that sound, but it's a nice little moment on the record. Even though we only have 9 songs here, this album does feel fully formed, fully fledged. And obviously, with the
Yeah,
with the longer songs, 9 songs, it still does add up to a 45-minute length, which is pretty standard for a rock album, I guess. I think in terms of talking about the last 3 songs, we can sort of lump them together. And these were songs that had
sure.
to grow on me. There's some kind of weird production decisions in the songs Not the Same Anymore and Why Are Sundays So Depressing, which for different reasons I find them a little bit flawed. But on Why Is Sunday So Depressing, I would say the chorus has this very garish, I don't know if it's a synth or a guitar that's been heavily manipulated, but just the way it's mixed, it's so upfront and kind of ugly, and it doesn't feel like it's entirely in time. And I'd say if you take that out of the song, it continues the trend of really great tracks on here because that song has these amazing points where Julian goes into his higher register, and I feel like they're one of the best demonstrations of how much his range has improved on this album. On that song and on Not the Same Anymore, I'd say Julian really does most of the heavy lifting because instrumentally, Not the Same Anymore sounds a bit like a Room on Fire B-side or Leftover to me, which isn't the worst thing ever, but it still pales a little
So
compared to songs like Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus or The Adults Are Talking or even Selfless for that very impassioned vocal performance on there. But yeah, those songs, initially I wasn't too keen on them, the last three, but they grew on me. Sundays and Not the Same Anymore. The only song I'm really not too keen on here is Ode to the Mets, because I feel like it has a very predictable chord progression, and vocally, Julian sounds a bit too much like the singer from Franz Ferdinand on here, and I just found that kind of jarring for some reason. Like, I didn't feel as compelled or engaged by the vocals on that song. But I know it is a favourite now amongst fans, so I guess don't take my views on that one too seriously. But yeah, what did you guys think of the last three tracks?
And this is the slowest section of the album, I'd say. Like we said, none of the songs are, blistering and up tempos like anything on Is This It? There's no Last Nights on here. But yeah, like I would definitely understand if this is like the point where some fans start to fall off just because it's like a little too sleepy, dreamy for when you're talking about why are Sundays so depressing, you mean kind of like that heartbeat kind of sound?
Yeah, I really didn't enjoy that that much, and I continue not to, which is a shame because there's a guitar melody at the end of that song that's mixed so oddly. It sounds like weirdly bit crushed or something, but it's awesome, and it's a great guitar melody. Like, it sounds like a classic Strokes melody that's been put through this bizarro blender, and I really dig it. The whole second leg of that song is great.
Personally, I kind of preferred that heartbeaty kind of synth guitar whatever to the plink plonk whatever kind of synth you were talking about in Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus, because like that to
That's
me just
fair.
never felt like it was actually part of the song. It always felt like the song had to stop to work that back in.
oh yeah, it like did have to stop to have that play in, and it was like the intro of the song. Yeah,
Julian literally says break. Like, they literally stop.
yeah,
They
yeah.
they literally stop the song so that they can go back
Well,
into it.
there's some weird meta moments like that, like in Ode to the Mets when, yeah, drums, please, that bit. I don't know. It definitely is the feeling of, guys just like being loose and having fun, but at the same time, it does make things kind of weird on some levels.
Ode to the Mets is definitely an okay closer, but I definitely had the distinct thought that the opening of it wasn't very good. One aspect of the album I think works really well throughout most of it is the sort of interplay between the guitars and the keyboard parts. They mesh together really well for the majority of this album. The start of Ode to the Mets has a guitar part and a keyboard part that do not mesh at all. They feel like two different openings to a song, like two different intros played over each other that don't mix at all well together
Yeah,
for me.
I can agree with that.
I don't know. They're played at different speeds, different tempos. They don't interlock or do anything. I honestly, first time I was listening to it, thought I had a song playing in a different tab or something because I was like, this doesn't sound right.
I was expecting it to have a much smoother transition, especially considering on The Adults Are Talking, we start out with this like 808 sequenced drum pattern that
Oh
then
yeah, that's true.
very, very gracefully transitions into those classic Strokes guitar melodies and arpeggios being layered over each other. When I first heard the last song on here, I thought it was going to be a similar case, but no, the little ditty at the beginning feels so it must be in a completely different key or something. 'Cause
Yeah,
it just
definitely.
doesn't fit with the rest of the song.
Just feel like
Um,
disparate parts of something that don't mix together. I don't know. The rest
yeah,
of the song is pretty good, but
yeah,
I just don't think that opens it very well. Like, it takes 100 seconds or something for the drums to kick in. It takes a while for it to kick into gear. Maybe I haven't given it the time of day as much or as much focus as some other songs here.
I like the switch up towards the end. Like the second chord progression on the song is really good, even though it's borrowed from something. Like, I'm 100% sure it's borrowed from something in a similar fashion to, I don't know, the last track on I'm Wide Awake It's Morning. How that song is borrowed from like a composition. I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about. But
What the
if anyone
Bright
listening
Eyes
has
album?
if anyone listening has that frame of reference, the closer of the Bright Eyes album, I'm Wide Awake It's Morning, This does a vaguely similar thing, but I can't remember what the track in reference to it is. Yeah, it's a decent closer. It just kind of stood out as the weakest point on here for me.
Yeah,
Perhaps it'll grow on me though, because like I said, the previous two tracks took a few listens to stick with me. The second to last track has this really nice outro on it that goes on for a little while. That's kind of like that hallmark brand of Strokes guitar interplay, but played really smoothly and in a more relaxing fashion. I really dug that. So yeah, overall, Alex, what would you say your closing thoughts and score are for this new Strokes album?
this album is excellent. It's fun to listen to. I can replay it dozens of times, even though I haven't actually done that. I could, because it just seems so much fun to listen to. The band seem energized and really tight and fresh together. Julian, my God, his vocals and keyboard playing on this are just excellent. The songs are really creative and adventurous. Rick Rubin does a really good job. I'd say he's done one of his best produced albums in years with this one. Yeah, if this is the new abnormal, I'm all for it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Cam?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys have said. This is definitely the sound of a band who's found a new foothold. Whether or not this is a sound that they're going to continue on future releases, or if they just needed to, take a brief detour to, get their energy back, get back into the swing of things. Either way, I think this is a really solid album. Maybe as I get more into their previous work, my rating could raise a little bit. But for now, I'm going to settle on giving this one a solid 7.
Yeah, as a longtime fan of The Strokes, I can't say I was disappointed by this album. I'm really happy with it. There's definitely a few moments that strike me as a bit odd and that just don't really gel with the rest of what I'm hearing. The heartbeat synth slash guitar on Why Are Sundays So Depressing, for example, is just so distracting to me. And there's a couple of moments as well that we didn't mention on other songs that aren't quite as bad as that, but they are like a bit eyebrow raising in the wrong way. I mean, Eternal Summer at first, like I said, I just couldn't tell if I hated that song or not, but I really like it. It really opened up a lot on subsequent re-listens, and when I had that frame of reference of it being almost Pink Floydian, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Pink Floyd, it kind of made it make sense to me, like the juxtaposition going on there. But yeah, it's a really solid set of tracks. The track lengths, you don't really feel them being much longer than, the average song on their older albums, because they're just so well structured and, like we said before, adventurous. Like, even though it's only 9 songs, I feel like I got a lot of content from this album, despite it having been such a long time since we last heard from the Strokes, and such a long time since we had a great Strokes song as well. I didn't really love any of the songs on Come Down Machine, and Angles only really had Under Cover of Darkness, which, is a great song, but it also feels very Strokes by the numbers. Here we've got a bunch of great songs that feel like something genuinely new for the band, and that's one of the best things I can say about it. Even though not all of the ideas necessarily work all that well, and even though I feel like it doesn't quite stick the landing with the closing track being a little underwhelming, I really liked this album, and I really hope it's not going to be another 7 years between this and the next Strokes album, because they feel like they're re-energized and can put out some great material together again. But we'll see what Jules does later down the line. But yeah, great album. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, solid 7. And I'm looking forward to hearing whatever they do next. And I hope it's real soon. So yeah, thanks for joining us on this episode of Busted Speakers. It's been a long one. We're all a bit frazzled from the current state of the world, but we're going to keep making episodes. Stay safe out there. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.